I mean, we went through this last time. Old approach no longer really works. We can't go show a bunch of properties, earn their trust, and then get an agreement secured. That used to be the way. And now we have to have the conversation in a process to build rapport and to get an agreement signed before the paperwork comes out. But the paperwork has to come out early. That's a big challenge. Is anyone having problems doing that, or at least difficulty getting their buyer leads to feel comfortable with signing something before going out? Is
It's
that
just
where you get
awkward.
pushback? Awkward? Awkward for who? Them or you?
For me, because we don't have a relationship yet, we don't even know each other. So it's like that's not something, doesn't seem natural.
Yeah.
Can I offer? I don't know what other states are allowing, but Wisconsin has a pre-agency agreement that they came up with. So it allows you to get people into the initial home that you show them. And then you can have them sign a buyer agency agreement. But I do find that that form is helpful for the people that you don't know that you are showing maybe one home, and it allows you to build that little bit of rapport before entering. I don't know if your other states allow that, but that would be something to look into.
Yeah, we have that at our brokerage. It's just like a showing agreement, like a 1 day showing agreement. So it's still awkward.
Yeah, back in the day, I got licensed in '04, and the markets were gangbusters from '04 to 7, then everything fell to shit. But during those couple of years, I think they basically went away. But we used to do those single party showing agreements. And I think that's kind of what you're referring to, Kelsey, right? Those have come back around.
Yep.
The reason we would do them, obviously, were to, if people were going direct to listing agent, it was a really difficult climate to be a buyer. And so, yeah, protected you. There is still that problem of like, okay, once you get through the single showing, we have to turn this into a formal relationship. Otherwise, they're back into the pool of talking to other agents. And I agree with Lori and everyone else who's dealing with this who can't speak or isn't right now. It is awkward. It was so much easier before where you can earn their business through showing them how you do and what you do. And there's almost like that handshake agreement allowed space and time for them to look at you as a viable choice. It's like going out on a couple dates before you agree to a dinner date. Yeah, get a couple cups of coffee first. It's tough, and yet that's everyone's challenge. And I also know that our buyer leads, whether they're going on .com portals, wandering in and out of open houses, they're all dealing with agents who are better outcomes, like any lead generation. It's not the thing, it's how you present the thing. It's not the thing, it's how you approach the thing. So today we want to break down, some things that I know to be working based on conversations I'm having with you, with other really successful agents, and just some common sense things that probably were always there on the listing side, but now we're thinking about them in terms of how to leverage that in our buyer lead conversations. A lot of this stuff is common sense, but it's worth noting. And if we can get comfortable with a better process, we're going to have more success. We did quickly, these next couple are just a recap of part one, but the agreement isn't a trap, right? It's something that we need to have in place, but it's really just a professional standard. So industry requirement, it's not something that we're trying to trick them through, but buyers are still, depending on how you position it, not really seeing it the same way. Even if they've heard about the NAR lawsuit, even if it's something that they've been told by others, it feels like people are looking to trap them in an agreement when it comes up super early. And so that's the challenge, right? We talked about this last time, but I'll remind you because we're going to come back to it a few times today. Everything about your business falls on a value proposition. Your value proposition for your buyers looks different than that for your seller clients, right? You are still a great agent. You have your reasons that people hire you, your experience, all those great things are locked in, but the value you provide different types of clients shifts. And you can come up with more than 4. My original attempt at articulating my buyer value proposition actually had 7. I've distilled it into these 4. I'm going to ask for your experience and opinion on these for a second. But in my view, it's access, strategy, protection, and then that experience/decision support. Access is the first part of it. And for many, many years, that's what buyer agents focused on. But we all know that the big stuff happens under protection and experience and decision support. Strategy, some people think they're the smartest person in the room and they don't really bite on that, especially if they bought a few places. I get it. But what people ultimately can't hedge against is the fact that they might make a mistake if it's a process that they're really attached to. It's like why representing yourself in court is a bad idea, because you're being told you broke the law, you're a liar, you're a cheater, and your attorney is there to defend you unemotionally about the case, not you reacting to what's happening. And so we all know when we're going through the buying or selling process, it's highly emotional. Even if things are going well, you're subject to the highs and lows and all the different things happening. And there's a great statistic to consider bringing up, which is about 1 in 4 buyers post-COVID say they regret their home purchase for one of a couple reasons. Usually it's for overpaying or the wrong property. They got caught up in something, a bidding war they didn't want to be in. So regret and making mistakes, 25% of the market is self-identifying, saying they've done some of that. And so that decision support is huge. Does anyone have additions, subtractions, something they would change about their buyer value proposition? Do those 4 resonate? And if they don't fully, what does? What makes you a great choice beyond your care and competency, your resume, those things? Anything come to mind that isn't one of these 4? All right, cool. If you don't have anything, I would suggest you try using these 4 in your buyer packets, having quick vocabulary and talking points around some of this stuff. But I really do think access is just the tip of the iceberg. And it's, as we all understand, less and less important as people are finding, technology and other ways to get into properties. So the back half of this list is where you're going to, make people understand your value and what makes you different than Redfin. What makes you different than the Zillow preferred agent they just clicked on? Last thing we'll recap, and then we'll dive into today is, great agents are doing things differently. Obviously, they are creating an environment where signing feels like the safe, right decision rather than the pressure that comes with it. And so I would say if you do one thing right, it's to create the confidence in the person that this is the right thing to do, the next thing to do. It's not like we don't need to over explain it. We don't need to apologize for it. We don't need to talk in terms of, I wish I didn't have to do this, but unfortunately we need. Like those are all vocabulary that undermine your confidence, undermine their confidence in you and the confidence that you may or may not have, right? So how you describe things and how you position tends to instill confidence in the person you're talking to. And so, I mean, not that we're salespeople in the traditional sense, but if you were to just look at the sales aspect of getting someone to go from lead to client, there's lots of sales there. That process looks like they just have to feel it's their idea and you're the right choice. And the best salespeople are able to position whatever it is they're selling as exactly that. Like, you say you need this. Well, this is how it works working with me. Does that sound like a good fit? And they're saying, yeah, it does. Okay, well, this is how it all goes. And you create the environment where they feel confident to move forward. So if you had one takeaway, positioning with confidence and clarity is the right decision when it comes to getting people past this hurdle of an agreement to get their home sale or their home search started. Positioning is everything. Make sense? It's position. It's not the thing itself. I believe these are the 3 things that buyers are most afraid of. You tell me. You tell me. I think it's fear of commitment. They're then confused about compensation in some cases, or they just don't quite yet understand what it is working with you entails or agents in general. I don't know. Does anyone have anything else that they think is a major hesitation when they start talking about agreements with buyers? I don't think most of these objections are logical. I think they're emotional concerns that really haven't been addressed yet. These are not truly like logical objections that they're truly feeling. It's more of just a concern. Fear of commitment. I mean, what even is that? Other than being locked into something you don't want to be in. Now, there's some stuff we can do to completely mitigate it, but fear of commitment is like fear of making a mistake, bringing in the wrong person. Well, how can you even measure that if everyone is like a stranger to you, or you're new into this process, or we've never really had the relationship? Maybe you refer to me or whatever, but you don't yet know who I am. This fear of commitment is something that we can't fully solve for people. We just have to make it safe for them to move forward and give them some opportunities to stay in control, which we'll talk about today. I think confusion about compensation is probably the biggest change post NAR suit, right? Fair to say?
Yep.
Tell me, I mean, if whoever can participate, what percentage of transactions are buyers in your experience or your colleagues at the office? What percentage of buyers are stuck paying their agent the entirety or a large part of the buyer broker commission? Like on average, how often is this happening in your experience?
10% in our market area.
How do you get that? Was that something the broker put together?
We discussed it yesterday in our meeting, and it's really, I think the 10% is really happening on the higher end of the luxury market versus the lower end. But with that being said, we also had one on the lower end where an offer was accepted, and that agent, the buyers were paying their compensation. So I think it just boils down to strategy. I think it boils down to, does the buyer have the funds to do that, and that type of thing.
But you're seeing about 10%, probably mostly on the higher end.
Mm-hmm. Like I would say anything over 3.5.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyone else? We'll come back to that in a second.
I would say that I actually have often buyers paying me not maybe the full commission, but a portion. We get the seller to pay a portion and then the buyer brings the rest. It all depends on the deal and what kind of offer they're submitting to the seller. But I indicate that, like, I make them very aware that if the seller doesn't pay it all, they are responsible for the remainder of my compensation.
And how often is that coming up, at least in full? You said not much in full. It's usually part of.
No, yeah, usually it's in part. I would say maybe 50% of the time.
Okay. It's a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Anyone else?
With me, I feel like I've been paid like 95% on the buyer's commission. I've had only one that it got covered half because it was a new build, and the builder paid 1.5%, and then the buyer paid 1%.
So you're saying most of the time they're paying you or the seller's paying?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, sorry about that. I was driving. I was not focused. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I thought you guys talking about the buyer who's paying. Okay, yes, the buyer, the seller is paying, not the buyer.
In most cases.
Yes.
Cool, cool. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. There's lots of data flying about this topic. What it seems to me, and I have the privilege of traveling around the country, speaking in different markets, but also coaching different markets, is that it's mostly still what it used to be. It just has changed from a process standpoint. It's no longer offered in MLS or in other obvious places. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't see much changing about how often buyers are paying versus sellers. Look, buyers make the whole deal go. We all know this. Like, sellers don't exist without buyers. And so buyers have always paid the whole thing, actually. Like, if I give you $1 million for your house and you're offering 3%, your buyer is not, your seller's getting less the amount they're giving to the buyer agent. And so the buyer has paid the $1 million, the seller has gotten $30,000 less. Like, the buyer's always paid it. And so it's a matter of, is it being offered up front, or is this a part of the deal we have to negotiate? And if we can't in the price, then you owe me the cash for my representation fee. And again, I would just say it's mostly intact how it used to be. About 13% of the market is for sale by owner, meaning not just like the traditional FSBO, but estate sales, neighbors buying houses from their, you know, there's inheritance stuff going on. But about 13% of inventory nationally trades without a broker, said differently. So I guess that's not for sale by owner, without a broker, of which some of the deals that aren't paying commission are often those off-market type of things. Kendra, you mentioned the higher end. I have a sense there might be an off-market pocket listing. If I get this price, then I would sell. And in the higher end, there's a lot of people in that category. So for your average motivated seller who had a job transfer or something going on, it's always been a part of the process for them. And that probably hasn't changed much. But just saying to your client, don't worry about it, isn't very comforting either when you put in a 2.5 or 3% in your agreement and say, oh yeah, if they're not paying, you have to pay me. And so confusion is created when there's lawsuits and headlines and all of a sudden it's not so clear. So our job isn't to over explain it, but to create really easy, clear instruction around how it all works. And that's also true with our value. So if we're to go back to the slide, personally haven't seen much more than these three as being like major reasons for hesitation. Last call. Anything else coming up for y'all? Objections, reasons that they were not ready to go. Cool. Let me go back to, oh gosh, I keep losing my place on my slides. So anyway, we'll get through that. This is the proper processed order that we now have to consider going through. Before it was show how, there's a lot of different things we could have said before. But today, it's basically establishing the role that a buyer agent plays, explaining the buying process, then the agreement, and then we tour. I think part of this is the agreement comes up too soon. It's funny to say because it's coming up sooner than all of us would like it to, but it's often something we just feel we have to immediately address in maybe the very first conversation. When in true form, it's not. If you slow down and say, my only priority in our first interaction is to establish what it is I do for my clients and the role I play in your home search. If that's objective one, focus on that. Said differently, and we've always said this on the listing side, but let's bring it back to our buyers. If they don't buy you, they buy nothing else. You are selling yourself first. And now if this is a referral or a past client transacting a second time or a sphere of influence person, they may already be good on you. They already quote unquote bought you. They are good on, not much needs to happen. When you're talking to an open house lead, they haven't bought you. They don't know you yet. They don't like you yet. They don't trust you yet. So establishing you is priority before agreements, paperwork, talking about real estate hardly. If they're good there, we just got to make sure the process of buying is something that we explain a little bit more clearly and don't just blow through to get into the transactional parts, which is the agreement and touring. So those first two steps got to be locked in. If you already got one, make sure you have the second, but let's get both of those in place. Oh, by the way, you may have heard the rules have slightly changed on how this works. We used to just go look at properties, and when we found the right thing, that's when we did some paperwork and it was all easy peasy. Now it's just a little bit different. Oh, yeah, okay. But it's like the by the way, it's not something we want to lead with. Easier said than done, but just think of it in that order. Make sense? There's a objection handling framework that I've created a couple years ago when I'm thinking about like, why do people balk at working with you on the listing side or the buying side? Well, there's all types of reasons, but there's a framework to work through any of those challenges that I found to be extremely effective. And I've taken a lot of sales training, and this is basically the core elements of how to work through anything with anyone. If you look at the secure the commitment, the last thing, that could mean getting the buyer broker agreement signed, but that could also look like agreeing to meet. That could also look like agreeing to take some next steps that aren't yet the agreement. So this framework helps at all friction points, whether it's you just met and you're trying to get the consultation, or you've had the consultation and they're still considering their options and thinking it through. So use it as however you like. If you aren't a fan of 6 steps, here's the simple version. Ask questions, stay on their side. Literally think of it as removing objections to the extent you're able to take things away that they're concerned about, and then move forward. I'll explain each one very quickly. Your ears are going to make you a lot more friends and clients than anything else. We often feel we have to pitch our clients. I'm very guilty of this. I have to explain my value. I have to pitch you. You have to get it. Well, that's really not where people end up making their decision. People make decision when they're heard, they're understood, and then they walk toward what it is they want. And so if you can think of yourself as a guide towards getting them to do something they want to do, rather than convincing them to do something you want them to do, it's the whole thing. And so questions is how you get there. Who, what, where, when, why, how. And there's levels to the amount of questions, but I would suggest as a framework, if you're meeting someone for the first or second time, if they're a stranger or very loosely connected to you, until it gets awkward asking another question, keep asking questions and try to listen very intently on what they're saying, because most people will tell you what is most important to them. I think a lot of agents just feel the need to talk their way through everything, but that's where you miss. when they say something inside of like an objection, let's say, the probing questions are about the objection itself or just in general. But let's assume we heard one. Yeah, I'm just not sure I'm ready to fully commit yet. Rather than just blowing into, let's handle it, mirroring their concern is basically repeating back what you think you heard. It really disarms people and it slows down what you need to say. And just mirroring their concerns is try it out. You can do this with like a relationship too, but do it with a lead. If I heard you correctly, you're saying fill in the blank. Do I have that right? Yes. They feel heard now. There's something powerful about that. The third step, this is important, staying on their side, is the idea of putting your arm around somebody metaphorically. I mean, you don't want to actually do this, so maybe it'd be a little awkward, but don't allow yourself to become their adversary. In a negotiation, I want a buyer broker agreement signed, not because I'm like a selfish piece of shit, but because that's the next step in our relationship and you and I should be working together and we already agree, but they're still having concerns. And so it's easy to be like, why not? What's wrong with you? Not that you would say it that way, but you become their adversary when you start confronting people. And yet staying on their side means we're on the same team. We're on the same team. We're going to solve this together or we're not going to solve it at all. And so I like the idea of me having my arm around them, being on the same side of the table rather than at opposite ends. And most great negotiators find a way to stay on the other side the entire time. If you can do that, now we're just trying to isolate what it is they're truly concerned about. And leading with empathy and tie down simply means like, I totally understand that. If in your position, I'd feel the same. But if we could solve fill in the blank, or if would you feel good enough to like take the next step, move forward? And then you secure the commitment. But again, the simple version of it is just ask the question, stay on their side, take things off the plate that you're able to, and move forward. I hope that helps give you some framework around it, but let's break it into a real scenario. I'd rather work with the listing agent. Anyone getting that one right now? Or historically have gotten that one? Rather go direct to listing agent? There's a couple
Yes.
reasons someone would want that. My guess is they believe that it would save them some type of money. I don't know. If it's competitive market, give them an edge. So that's cool. Probing questions. Got it. Help me understand your thinking behind that approach. You may already freaking know, but make them say it. Ask another question or two. Double tap on it, right? So you're hoping it might save you money. You say back whatever it was said to you. I would stay on their side by saying, like, I'd want to maximize my advantage too. If I were in your position, I would want the best possible outcome too. If I were in your position, it's kind of like that empathy. I'm on your side, right? We can move into it as about like trying to isolate that part of the conversation. Is it more about getting a better deal once you find the right house, or just keeping things simple? Like we're trying to isolate what's at the core of this concern. And again, going back to an empathy and a tie down, this is what it looks like. I'd feel similar. And I'm not here to interfere with your plans. That's empathy, right? I'm not here to screw you up. I'm not here to get in your way. But if working with me meant having someone putting you in front of more options, like the off-market stuff you're not seeing with the listing agents, more options, negotiating solely on your interests and helping you avoid costly mistakes, would you be open to hearing about how that works? That's a tie down, right? If I could do this, would you? And then it's like, let's move forward and at least meet and I'll show you how. And by the end of it, you would know exactly what that looks like. No hard feelings if they don't want to still move forward. Now, we're talking about something that would come before the agreement, but if we're getting pushback at the part of signing the agreement, there's just some disconnect in the process. And you're going to hear one of many, many objections. And this is the exact process to best work through them. Now, if you, again, feel like this is a little complicated in how to action on this, just make sure you're asking some follow-up questions before you just react to what it is. Let me understand what's going on here, or like just help me understand so I'm clear and can give you the best advice. And I like keeping on their side by saying, I'm not trying to get in the way of anything you want to do, but just want to make sure I understand fully. No hard feelings. Slowing things down and letting them talk through it can often unpack the emotions around the objection. Going back to our point a few minutes ago, it's usually not a logical objection. It's an emotional one. If it is logical, that's cool too. But we can handle both this way. Before I go any further, any questions, any thoughts? Questions at all? I'm happy to run through if anyone has recently or just something they've heard in the office went through an objection. I'm happy to run through that framework, showing you how I would personally handle it. Anyone have something they want to run through? So I've got a couple other examples I can share with you in slides, but I want to show you how to work in this through almost any problem you hear. If you got some, let's go. I think a lot of these trainings, when I've been the recipient of them, feel a little bit far out. Like, how do I sink my teeth into it? So I always want to give you the confidence, like you can keep it real simple, but I do believe slowing down and thinking through how you would handle pushback, whether you're on this side or that side, this is a good environment to start thinking about your process and how you usually handle things and maybe getting new ideas on how you should handle them differently next time. Rather than making mistakes with clients and learning that way, we can just talk here and get a little bit better around the vocabulary and approach. Because it's really not about what you say. You're taught the scripts are all that matter, the sales tech. It's like, that's not really true. It's more about the process by which you handle things. The agreement, like I said, is no different. It's not the agreement, it's the process by which you approach the agreement and put it into the entire thing. So these frameworks are there to give you a different process. That's all. Anyone ever get this? Right? When you put this in your agreement, how it, like, am I going to get stuck paying for that? Right? So do we have a process that we have pre-thought of, or something that we integrate into our conversations around what is it like working together that address people, some of their biggest concerns, which is, will I get stuck paying for my agent's fee? Now, I bet you do. The question is it something that you go out of your way to talk about when you first meet a client? Almost like, you put it out there before they even ask the question? Is it in maybe some of your buyer pamphlets or material that you bring with you on open houses or other places? This is the sort of thing that, you having the message dialed in is good, but also having an approach by which you introduce things that are common concerns is very effective. And so, I mean, a little 3-step process. I verify, I explain, I insure, right? Every single transaction that I am a part of, before we get into it, I verify the situation when it comes to compensation, meaning you will know before we make an offer, or at the time of making an offer at the very latest, how this works and what the impact is and what our probability of having success given them paying or you paying, and like how that all fits into the deal. So you understand everything ahead of time, so you make smart decisions before you're locked into anything that is a surprise. Like, do I have a transparent process to alleviate the concern around you getting stuck paying for something you didn't want to pay for? That's the idea here. And now you may have that, but I think positioning matters. Like, one way to say it is, yeah, if they're not paying, you're stuck paying. Ugh. Sounds rather not like, even if it's a low probability chance, I'm not super excited to hear that. So you don't lie and say that will never happen, I promise. That's just, you can't make that promise. You say, look, it's within the realm of possibility. It's unlikely based on my experience, 10, maybe % of the market are seeing this sort of thing. But I have a 3-step process where I verify, explain, and ensure that you are going into every situation fully aware of the economics of the transaction. You're never stuck doing something you weren't confident in doing in the first place. And so having a little bit of a process around it, vocabulary, that's the idea. You probably do this. I just want you to think of it in terms of, this is where explaining it early in how you talk about agreements and getting stuck with things matters quite a bit. Matters quite a bit. I can't tell you how many, most people are not concerned about what they will get. They're worried about how bad they could be screwed. This is true of almost every buyer in every situation, not just a real estate transaction. But I'm not super, like, I like the idea of getting something really great out of this experience, but I'm most concerned what I am at stake of risking in this experience. And so having trust building processes to alleviate those fundamental concerns is the way to go. Another piece of this puzzle is we should really seek to normalize this process. It's not a favor. This is just the first step in the process of you buying your next home. Like, this is just a step in the process. So I give you a quick framework before we start touring homes. The first step is putting together a simple buyer agreement in place. It's now standard across the industry. Rather than saying that's what I require, that's what's required. It's like standard stuff. Put it together. And my favorite thing is to include some type of out clause so they don't feel trapped. The very first of the three big fears was getting trapped into something they don't want to be in. I have always had cancellation clauses in my real estate contracts because I believe that once we start working together, short of something really out of the blue happening, you're going to be extremely happy with at least how hard I'm willing to work for you. And all the stuff that I promised you at the appointment level is going to be true. The stuff I can control. My effort, my availability, my approach, my experience, those are all very confident in those things. Yet I realize you sitting here knowing me for 30 minutes, you don't have the benefit of knowing whether I'm telling you the truth or not. And so long before NAR lawsuits, I always had 24-hour, maybe 72-hour cancellation clauses in all of my agreements, buyer and seller, because it creates the ultimate accountability structure on both sides. Look, if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, or at any point you feel uncomfortable with what is happening in our relationship, you can get rid of me. And I'm so confident that won't happen that I'm giving you the out in the agreement itself. So you're never trapped, not with me. Maybe you had that experience other places. Maybe other agents have mandatory 3-month agreements. Like, that's not me. I have to earn it every day. That's my thesis in my business. Sound fair? What do you want to say? No? Don't want to sign that now? So I would use it as a tool, if that resonates with you, to instill confidence in the person that you're trying to earn their business from. If you feel like you're a good fit to work together, it's a very low risk move. Very low risk move. But either way, we have to normalize this as a part of the process.
Lindsay and I do that, Jonathan. We call it our, when we're meeting with clients and talking about the agreement, we call it our dating process. Say, we're dating at this moment. We don't know each other very well, and we might find out that we don't want to work together. But that's the dating process. But once we figured out that we like the way everyone works and we like the communication that's happening, then we'll get married basically and keep going until we have a home.
So I guess, is that a clause you remove at some point, or is that just you just leave it alone and that's the way you explain it?
We leave it alone, and that's the way we explain it.
And how many times, I mean, you've been in the business a while, how many times have people pulled the plug on that once you started doing it?
We've only had one person pull the plug, and that was because, we'd written offers for them, but they were not following our advice in writing the offers and felt like they just really got sick of the market. So they took a step back. So.
Love it. You and I are aligned. I had count on one hand in 10 years how many times it happened. And it was almost always for what you just said. They weren't having success either way. And it was just, let's wrap it up here. So yeah, guys, I mean, let Kendra's experience and mine be confidence boosting. If you don't do this, it really is an effective tool, especially in the climate we're talking about. With listing agreements, I know a lot of coaching clients over the years have pushed back on me. Why would I put that on? I just pay for staging. I just paid for photography. I'm out $3,000 if they fire me. And my argument is, but if it earns you the business and you're not going to screw up, what are the odds of you staging and doing all these things and then them one day just calling you and saying, get out of, you're out, someone else is in? That's super disruptive for them too. Like, if a client is willing to paint their house, throw their crap in storage, take my advice on this, price it the way we talked about, and their high needs and needed cancellation clause to feel real good about working together, like, sign me up. I'll earn it. Very low risk. Very, very low risk. Cool. So, I mean, here's the shift that we should all, let me get my screen back here. I've lost my place. Oh, actually, there's a slide before I want to bring up. If we're going to trigger resistance, it will likely happen in, again, the positioning of how you say what it is you're going to say. Would you be open to signing a buyer agreement? I highlighted the would you be. That's going to get the, maybe they were, but they're now, based on the way you position that, almost like you're asking for a favor. And that's not what you're asking for. This is a standard process. I also think reducing it to it's just a form. It almost minimizes the role you're playing and the importance of what you're doing. So you don't want to downplay it or up it. But this third one is something that I have been guilty of in years past. And it's just poor framing. Using the words "don't worry," and then you're not really locked in as okay, but it's putting "don't worry" before it that I think really screws up the idea here. We are not, the best approach is to say, again, going back to the framework, I understand why someone, like, I understand why you feel that way. And if I were in your position, I would share those concerns. Empathy, mirroring back. But this is just a normal part of the process of how I work. And this is going to be true with any representation you bring on. And in my case, I feel so strongly we would work well together that we even put a cancellation clause in all of our agreements. So you're never trapped in. I want to earn your business. I'm not here to trick you into signing something. It's not "don't worry." It's just, I understand that could happen. It's very unlikely. And to mitigate it, here's the steps that I put into place. Here's the approach. Here's how I handle that typically. People are far more receptive to those types of frameworks than they are being told to not worry, or it's just this, when they're like, wait a second, it's not just this, it's a fucking contract. Like, it just starts problems for certain people sometimes. And again, would you be open to, like, bad. Cool. Yeah, we can skip all that. So I think the cancellation clause we talked a little bit about, it keeps them in control. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for anyone that's likes understanding how people think and why they do what they do, like, need for control is definitely high on a lot of people's lists. And having some type of cancellation clause or mechanism they can exit this agreement gives them the control. So it's tactical on many levels. It hits a lot of buttons beyond just the "we just met" problem. It's the what if they're good, but they're a control freak? This is going to be freaking music to their ears. There's a lot of prominent brokerages that I've competed against that have mandatory minimums like 30 days, 60 days in their agreements. And so when you lead with a different thing, you're betting on yourself, you're putting them in control, you're showing confidence. You're not telling them you're confident. You're like, I am confident. It's in writing. And it's giving you a tactical advantage, especially in this climate. So I feel like we all get this, but let's make it a reminder. This is never about pressure. We can't pressure our leads into doing anything. They, like, think of it in terms of when you push on somebody, what's their first reaction? What's the first thing they're going to do? If I physically just started pushing you, you'd be like, push me back. You wouldn't even ask a question. You would just be like, I'm pushing back. When people feel pushed in any direction, their first reaction is to push back. So we can't push our way through it. And we've talked about different ways to go through. I just want to make it clear, like, all of those scripts that have those sharp angles, that have the best sales scripts, quote unquote, that you hear about are often push scripts, and pushing is just going to get a lot of push back. And so the calm, confident, framework driven stuff we've been talking about is the way that we get through those difficult conversations. That's the way. Well, before I keep going here, I want to, like, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left. I have a few other slides. I'm introducing ways to think about your approach and ultimately the places and ways that you would get the agreement signed. Any questions? Are you hearing anything that you're just like, yeah, but we're still struggling with this, or that doesn't make sense? Clear it up.
Like, I work with a lot of Zillow leads. So when I meet them initially, I realize the way I present it and the way I speak, and I don't assure them, but I'm literally presenting as this is the norm. This is what it is. Like, if you don't, like, this is across the nation. So I feel the only time they push is that when they actually have an agent, and then it's like, oh, okay, well then call your agent. But yes, I think it's the way you deliver is all about that. You have to assure them that, not assure them, but like, yeah, oh yeah, this is the agreement. And I always discuss the commission upfront before they even mention. And I do have a clause, and not even a clause, but it's like a $0, like you can cancel at any time. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. If you're dealing with those .com leads, those cold audiences, this stuff really is important. A lot of people in coaching come in with a more network driven business, and we teach some lead generation. And the truth is, this stuff is good for everyone. It's good to have in all cases. But if you're working with a colder audience, it becomes ever more important that you have ways in which you lead them towards working with you rather than pushing them towards working with you. And especially when it comes to those inquiries, like if you got a sign call on a listing tomorrow and a buyer that wants to go take a look at it, I like the idea of having a one-party show agreement. You kind of sidestep the whole thing before you just meet and show the darn house. If that's something you want to do, you had a good chat with the lead. You're just like, fine, let's just not get into this. But to continue that relationship forward, the next step isn't to get them into an agreement. What would be that next step? To get them to meet and talk about their home sale or home search, right? It's to try to convert them into a client. And at that moment, you're asking for something that they may not want. And so this is where having some process by which you go about is really beneficial. Part one, we talked a little bit more about the front end activities. So if you're, we don't have time to get into it all today, but there's some really savvy things you can do to position yourself at the point of inquiry to get that first meeting. But as you evolve in the relationship and you have a meeting or you are in communication and they're commitment weary, there's really only a couple things that you can do, but it comes down to properly ordering the thing, starting with they have to buy you. The moment you're selling anything other than yourself at the beginning, you're talking about something that comes after. And so when I'm meeting clients for the first time, I'm asking questions like what's most important in who you hire and your representation. What would be like the criteria you're utilizing when making the decision on who's the best choice to help you with that, and like trying to hear what they have to say, because that's the point where I'm going to bring in what I bring to the table as it pertains to what they're looking for. And they might be like, well, what do you charge or what happens when? Absolutely. And we're going to get into all that, but I know what matters most is the person at the center of this transaction helping you go through on your timeline in terms of what you want to accomplish. So I want to make sure you're clear on at least like who I am and what I do, and we'll get right into all that boring stuff here in a second. If you have any other questions about what, again, try to keep it there. Focusing on anything other than that is kind of missing the mark at the front end. But if you do have those sphere-based, referral-based leads coming in, they probably don't need that. So then it's more about just the process. Here are the steps we take. This is a normal thing. What if I get stopped paying? I have a 3-step process to ensure before everything happens that you are informed, and that won't be the case. Every transaction before we make the offer or at the time of making it, you will be fully aware the entire economic outlook and how this will all work. And I have an out clause in all my agreements. If you just feel like this isn't working for you at any point, you're never trapped with me. That alone can solve the majority of the objections that come through when it comes to this lead source. But I would also encourage all of us to really focus on why me? What makes me a great agent for your home search? The 4 pillars of buyer value proposition, I'll show it on the screen one more time here. But it's like, these are 4. It's by no stretch the entire possible list, but there's got to be a couple ways that you talk about yourself and your representation that resonate with your value proposition, what they get out of working with you. And these 4 are really good topics to fill in some gaps around. If you're like, well, I'll say it differently. If you're thinking to yourself, how exactly do I approach strategy? Maybe go to your reviews that people have left for you, or think about the experiences your clients have had and what do they value most about your strategy? What are they saying about how you strategically put them in a position to have success? Could you make a few very simple talking points around how you craft great strategy for your clients? Whether it's negotiating, positioning, protection. This is a big one as well. People are very analytical, deal and economics focused, but protection really dovetails into experience. And it's the process by which we make sure you don't miss what matters. There's lots of things happening in a transaction. Finding the house is the easy part. Going to closing is the hard part, right? And so how do we protect our clients throughout that entire process? We're not talking about negotiating anymore. Again, think of what your clients value about the experience working together, maybe distill that into a few key points. And I do believe the experience we provide in the decision support, AKA the guides we play in their sale or search, is truly a differentiator. If they go to Redfin right now and click a button and some person shows up who just smoked a joint in their car to open a door and make an offer, like it's not, they're just getting someone pushing buttons, opening doors, and filling out paperwork. That's not very valuable, not in today's world. But what is very valuable is someone who can guide you through the complex process of buying your next home and give you decision support, not just when it's a good idea, but when it may not be. So we're together, we're mutually aligned, and it goes far beyond the deal. It's about the relationship and the experience. So I just think at the end of the day, we have to have a couple ways we describe all of these. Outside of the frameworks and agreement stuff we just talked about, this is what's going to win us more opportunities to serve more clients, many of which we may not have already met. So that's what I've got. Any last minute questions? I appreciate y'all hanging around. I know people have had to come in and out, but any lasting questions here? Anything that you think you should be doing as a result of maybe what you heard today? Anything we should be building, creating, thinking about differently, or just a great reminder?
One thing that Lindsay and I were just talking about that we liked was going back to like our client testimonials and what have they said about us and bringing those into our value proposition. So that's a really good plan or thought. Thank you for that. The other thing we have done is brought in like what other agents have said about us. There's a rate my agent or something like that. But I've had other agents like comment like how it was working with me. So I brought that into our testimonials as well. So going and looking at all of that and adding that into, that would be a really good idea.
Love that. Is there really a rate my agent, like a rate my professor site?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's other agents that go in and like talk about, a certain agent they've worked with. I think they just changed the name. I don't think it's called Rate My Agent anymore, but you have to pay for it. I never did.
You could also like send your clients like kind of like you could send them a Google link for filling out a Google review.
Yeah.
You could send them through Rate My Agent, and then Rate My Agent would distribute it out to different places and that kind of thing. But
yeah. But I was like,
Feedback to have though.
yeah, I was happy when agents wrote about me. So then I'm like, well, I don't have to pay for this. This is great.
So yeah, that's a good nugget. Go to your testimonials, see what your clients are saying. Go to this site. This is the experience that other colleagues have working with me. And you already know this, but it takes two to tango, right? So playing well with other agents and having those relationships is very, very helpful for your clients. Cool. I love that. Anything else? I'll leave you on this thought. It's come up a bunch in the last month or so. Our marketing, but more importantly, our approach and therefore follow-up. Like our marketing gets the opportunity, but then that just is like the beginning. There's a couple things that still need to happen between that and you have a client. Those things I'm talking about are mostly won by considering what it is our end user, our buyer client, our seller client wants from this experience, like premeditating, thinking through what that might be. And at the time of meeting, laying out something that might be music to their ears. In other words, thinking about what your ideal client wants and then coming up with little ways that you over deliver for that person and having that as a part of the conversation you're having very early in the process in your follow-ups. That's huge. A lot of agents say, I like to sell houses. I love helping everybody. Like these like kind of general nothing burgers. But if you're just like, I'm passionate about this and here's exactly how I approach it to get people results, because at the end of the day, I do this for my client satisfaction. Like the economics take care of itself if that is dialed in. And so here's exactly what people get when they work with me. And you just like lay it out and they're like, yes, that's huge. The second part is enthusiasm, laying it on heavy and thick where it's necessary, not to convince someone. That's the push where people just push back, but in conveying that you are a great choice for them and would be excited by the potential to work together. And if there's anything you haven't addressed or could address, or look, I'm here to just help, not get in your way, but show that enthusiasm that I want to work with you. If it's the right fit, people like pick up on that energy. And instead of them just saying like, yeah, we'll call you later and let you know, you just say like, that's fine. You do that. But in the meantime, I get a sense that you're not fully sure if this is the right fit. And I just want to be like, you're not going to learn anything when this conversation's done about what I might be able to do or how we can work best together. So like, is there anything that I need to address, or is there any criteria that I haven't covered that you're utilizing when making this decision? And if not, that's cool. We'll talk later. And just showing that like extra gear of enthusiasm can convert a lot of these people into, fine, we just don't want to be locked into it. You finally hear the dumb thing and then you solve it. Like, I have a cancellation clause. Anything else? So anyway, those are the two things to really think about. Over anticipate what they want and over deliver for them in your early conversations, and show that enthusiasm, excitement to work together. The rest of the stuff is just the process. So that's what I got.